Sounds good. Like previously mentioned, my name is Troy Brown. I'm a senior sustainability major, and I'm presenting on the Cincinnati 2030 district today, or a prospect of a Cincinnati 2030 district. So what is a 2030 district? 2030 districts are membership organizations in dense urban downtown areas that are looking to increase their energy efficiency, water use efficiency, and reduce the amount of CO2 emissions into the air. They do this whether it's starting construction in new buildings by using LEED and different things like that, or retrofitting old buildings to be as efficient as possible in all those three areas. So 2030 districts, they bring together property owners, business owners, local business owners, and local government to work together in order to achieve these goals, to create a more urban and sustainable environment. They currently represent 271 million square feet across North America in 15 different cities, and there's also 6 cities that are currently in the process of becoming a 2030 district as well, so pretty soon that number is going to jump up from 15 to 21 cities. And they range everywhere from cities like Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all the way out here east to Portland, Maine, Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, things like that. So it's been proven that this can work in just about any. Cleveland is also in there, and I will be touching a lot on that later in my presentation. So in order to become a 2030 district, you need to achieve 3 main goals, and that's reducing energy consumption by 50% by 2030, reduce water consumption by 50% by 2030, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions produced by CO2 and transportation by 2030. As a company or a business or a property owner, those are the goals that you would have to achieve. And there's annual and biannual goals before the year 2030 that need to be set and achieved in order to remain a district. So what's the value in a 2030 district? I think that's what a lot of the business owners and property owners and the local government are kind of looking at and analyzing right now. And it has benefits to the stakeholders as well as the local community. If we're producing 50% less greenhouse gas emissions, if we're using less energy, if we're using less water, that's going to improve the quality of life here in Ohio. And that's a big deal. This is something that Tyler's going to touch on too in his presentation. When millennials are looking for places to move, when they're looking at jobs, sustainability is becoming more and more of a driving factor behind where they want to live. And so we want to make Cincinnati as sustainable and appealing as possible to young talent that's looking to join the workforce right now. Not only that, but you gain cutting edge technology or networking. That's something that I really found to be useful in talking to the different districts. I was able to contact multiple different districts. They were very responsive, very helpful, and you could really feel the sense of, that it's a community. It's not every man for himself or every city for itself. They're going to do whatever they can. They're going to provide any information, any advice, any help that they can in order to help you achieve your goals and become a 2030 district. So now I'm going to talk about where Cincinnati stands today as far as these 3 main categories go that the 2030 district aims to reduce. So all this information comes from the Green Cincinnati Plan, a 2014. So I'm going to start first in the energy conservation and efficiency. So Cincinnati currently has a goal to reduce the total energy consumption in the built environment by 15% by 2020, achieving right around 37% by 2030. So you can see there needs to be a little bit of improvement in that area if we would want to join. I thought it was also worth mentioning that 70% of the energy usage in Cincinnati comes from pumping and filtering water. So if we were able to more effectively do that or put a better system in place, we'd probably be better off as a city as a whole. Now looking at the water aspect of it, this was something that kind of confused Ollie and I initially. Why would Cincinnati, Ohio care about water conservation when we're not out west, when it's not an issue, when we have water and we're going to have water for a while? Why should we worry about that? The 2030 districts take that into account, and you can also reduce storm water overflow by 50%. That's another goal that you can achieve instead of water conservation. And that's actually a huge issue in Cincinnati, as we've learned in all of our different economics and sustainability courses, we have a lot of flooding and we do not have a good sewer system in place. So using things like permeable pavement, bioswales, rain gardens, rooftop gardens, things like that really help to manage that stormwater in the most effective way possible. Cincinnati street trees, so just all the trees on the street in Cincinnati provide $8 million, $8 million worth of environmental benefits to the public. So a lot of companies think that, we can't get involved, we don't have the funds, we don't have, the assets to get involved in sustainability. Well, like Nancy always said in class, go out and plant a tree, you're gonna do a lot more help than you think you're gonna do. And as far as greenhouse gas emissions go, the Green Cincinnati plan currently states that we have a goal to reduce gasoline and diesel motor fuels by 20% by 2020, which puts us right around 50% by 2030. So that's a very achievable goal that we could probably even do just based on what we're doing right now, continue to do what we're doing because we're on pace to achieve that. And they also have a goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2% a year, achieving a 24% reduction from the baseline 2006, which puts us right around 30% by 2030. So we would obviously need to fill that gap as well. And that being said, there are several, looking at the Green Cincinnati plan, there are several gaps in where we currently stand and where we would want to be a 2030 district. So that's where I took into account the kind of other districts in our general area, interviewed them, and figured out the best practices that they used in order to achieve these goals. And I think I was mentioning too that Green Cincinnati goals are on a citywide scale, whereas the district would just be the buildings and the property managers involved. So on a much smaller scale, these goals are probably a lot more achievable and reachable than initially thought. So the first district that I decided to take a look at and talk to was the Cleveland 2030 district. So they currently have 40 million square feet committed to the 2030 district, and which includes 168 buildings. And something that I found to be really, really interesting about the Cleveland district was that they were the second district that was formed in North America. And when you think about sustainability, you're probably thinking, Seattle, San Francisco, you're not thinking Cleveland, Ohio. And I thought it was really impressive that they were the second city to, kind of get this movement going. And their main goal going into it was to put the city on a path towards carbon neutrality while benefiting local businesses and creating jobs. So they kind of heard about the 2030 district, and a big issue that was raised at City Hall meetings and things like that were, how do we engage commercial properties in reducing energy consumption because of the fact that they're huge buildings using up so much. The city of Cleveland thought that was a big deal, and they could do more to address that and improve the overall quality of life in Cleveland. So from there, the sustainability department in the city contacted the 2030 district that had just actually formed a year before in Seattle. And from the very beginning, it was a perfect fit. They found Seattle to be very helpful, and from there, that's where the community aspect of the 2030 districts really started to grow. The multiple people that I talked to in the Cleveland 2030 district spoke very highly of Seattle and what they did to help Cleveland achieve their goals. And I think that speaks a lot about 2030 districts in general. And something else that stood out to me in talks when I was talking to Cleveland was the fact that they wanted to be leaders. They wanted to, surprise people by, or not necessarily surprise people, but they wanted to make a statement that sustainability and the environment were important issues to the city of Cleveland. And so they wanted to take a leadership role in trying to lessen their effects that they have on the environment. Another district that I took a look at, these two districts I chose just because they're in our general region. They're two cities that you wouldn't necessarily think to be all that sustainable, but they're doing extremely impressive things in this area. And that's where we land on Pittsburgh. They have 76 million square feet committed, which is almost twice as much as Cleveland. And it's 70% of their downtown real estate, and that's a lot. I mean, Pittsburgh is not a small city, and it makes them the largest district in the country. So the largest 2030 district in the nation is in Pittsburgh. It's not in San Francisco. It's not in Seattle. So I feel as if, in this similar region, similar economies, Cincinnati could really benefit from, joining the 2030 districts. different driving factors behind Pittsburgh becoming a district was the immense amount of old buildings. They recognized they had a lot of old buildings downtown, and they didn't know how to, make them run efficiently. They didn't know the different metrics that they were using in order to kind of figure out where they currently stood. So they recognized that they had a lot of old buildings, and that's something that we have an issue with a little bit here in Cincinnati, especially in the OTR area where we have a lot of old buildings that we don't know if we should knock down or retrofit. And that's kind of where the 2030 district can kind of step in, analyze the situation, and figure out what is best for the city. A second driving factor behind Pittsburgh becoming a district was their poor air quality. And this is something that Tyler's going to touch on a little bit as well in his presentation, but our air quality in Ohio is not good. We're currently number 1 in the nation for childhood asthmatic rates, number 3 in the nation for toxic air pollution. So Pittsburgh recognized that they had poor air quality, and they decided to do something about it. They decided that they weren't going to subject their citizens to, breathing poor air without, doing whatever they could to improve the quality of life. And the third driving factor behind Pittsburgh becoming a district was staying economically competitive in today's job market, which I touched on earlier with, the new young talent entering the job market and wanting to move to a more sustainable city. And I felt as if Pittsburgh was one of the most useful districts that I did research on and contacted because of the fact, or because of how they formed. So they were formed within what's called an organization called the Green Building Alliance. And the Pittsburgh 2030 district operates as a small 3-person team within the Green Building Alliance. And they found it to be an extremely effective way to leverage the city and private companies to get involved. It's an organization much like Green Umbrella or the Greater Cincinnati Green Business Council. So I felt as if that was an extremely important factor that went into it. And they found that one of their biggest factors is demonstrating and celebrating success. So they wanted to go out and show people data in a digestible way and show other people how they can become more sustainable as well. And that's how it spread across the whole city, to over 76 million square feet. And they wanted to create enthusiasm and chatter around innovative projects that they're doing that are literally saving, companies in the city hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. So very important as well. And going into that, the 2030 districts pride themselves on being privately run and voluntarily run. So they want leaders. They want people who want to step up and make a difference in today's society. And especially with today's current political climate, it's becoming more and more clear that leadership and sustainability is going to have to come from the private sector, unfortunately. For example, the state of Ohio does not currently have mandated energy efficiency resource standards, and that's something that we could get through the 2030 district. And most of the energy providers that are offered in Cincinnati don't typically offer energy efficiency incentives to commercial customers. So that also makes the process of becoming more sustainable and cutting back on your energy usage harder and harder. And many businesses and organizations have programs around sustainability and resource efficiency, but they have dissimilar goals and ways of achieving it and different ways of measuring it. So what the 2030 district aims to do is bring these companies together, use the same metrics, and achieve the goal very similar to how Green Umbrella operates, and almost being a backbone organization that can help companies contact each other, who can share best business practices and things like that. So because of the fact that they pride themselves on being a privately run, I took a look at 2 main companies, Procter & Gamble and Fifth Third Bank. They were suggested to me by Ollie and Len. And they're both companies that are leaders in sustainability in the Cincinnati area. So as far as Procter & Gamble goes, their global and local sustainability goals line up very well with the 2030 district. The P&G Foundation has donated millions of dollars to causes right here in Cincinnati. And what better cause than this if they're going to talk the talk with their sustainability program and stuff like that. I think it's about time they walk the walk as well and really step up and become a bigger leader in the community. And also Fifth Third Bank. So Fifth Third Bank, they're constantly in discussion with the company. They're constantly looking for ways to cut costs and become more sustainable. They pride themselves on using LEED construction in all their new offices and banks. They just recently took on a $4 million LED lighting project across commercial offices and banks all across the country. And they found great opportunity in the sustainability aspect and the money saving aspect, which are kind of the two main factors behind the 2030 district in general. And also, Scott Capstones is the Director of Environmental Affairs at Fifth Third Bank, and he's also the president of Green Umbrella. So I feel like there's a very good connection there that could be utilized, which leads me to my recommendations moving forward. I would recommend that, this city of Cincinnati, puts this on Green Umbrella or the Greater Cincinnati Green Business Council and have them organize it, much like Pittsburgh did with the GBA, and have them help organize companies that they're already in contact with, they're already working with, and that could make the transition into becoming a 2030 district much smoother and much more achievable.